you're really appreciating the glory of God in a certain sense. That's worlds removed from pornography, where it's simply for use, simply for selfish. It's really the ultimate selfishness. And we might want to ask the question: is it possible to look with purity? I would say this: that one thing John Paul says in the Theology of the Body is he quotes the words of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. When Jesus says, "You have heard that it was said, 'Do not commit adultery.' But I say to you, if you even look at a woman with lust, you have already committed adultery with her in your heart." And most of us, when we hear those words, we say, "Oh," because who can be saved? Then because as a man, I think almost everybody has been guilty of this at some point or another. But the Pope says something interesting about these words. He says, "Are we to fear the severity of these words of Christ, or are we to really find some hope and trust in their salvific power?" In other words, this isn't a bad news saying of Jesus. He's saying this is a good news part of the gospel, because Jesus makes it possible for us to actually look at others with a pure look, to see others the way God sees them. And for that, we really need to ask for help. We're in that moment of temptation. Perhaps we see a pretty girl walking down the street, or perhaps we're tempted to lust, You say, "Lord, thank you for creating this beautiful person. Help me to view her the way you see her, as a daughter, perhaps a sister, as someone that is loved by you." And so ask God to kind of untwist those desires in our heart that Satan has tried to bring us down with. Yes?
I'm asking a lot of questions.
No, that's great. Keep coming.
In terms of intermarriage, in the marriage, how does Pope John Paul speak about the sexual relations within marriage? Because it's not a free-for-all, right? And like, for example, a woman could still try to entice her husband by wearing specific lingerie or something like that, right? We have to watch out in that case, of course, as well. I'm sure he speaks about maybe the certain things we can do in marriage.
It's kind of funny that you mention that, because one of the things that John Paul said is that a husband could even be guilty of the sin of lust with his own wife. Because some people think, well, as long as I'm married, kind of anything goes. No, not so fast, because it is possible to even look at your own spouse as an object. It's possible to slip into lust even with your own spouse. We have to fight against that. In terms of actual practices and things like that, the one in Christopher West's books on Theology of the Body, gives a good kind of rule of thumb. We could talk about many different things, but he just says, whatever you're thinking of doing, run it through this grid. This is what love really is. This is a total gift of self. This is what Christ did for us on the cross. He loved freely, totally, faithfully, and fruitfully. And this is what the wedding vows are like. So this thing that you're thinking of doing, is that a sign of Christ's free, total, faithful, and fruitful love for his church, or is it not? Okay? And clearly some things are very, very obvious. We can say, no, they're not. For example, the so-called homosexual marriage movement. Could that ever be a sign of Christ's love for the church? Absolutely not, because obviously it can't result in new life. So right there, it's not there. But obviously, Scripture talks about these things as being very grave and disordered activities. But that could go for a lot of different things. You just run through that grid and say, is this a sign of these four things, or is it not? Yes, sir.
How does Theology of the Body work in a marriage if one of them has AIDS?
That's a very, very good question. If one of the partners has AIDS, well, I think the thing that, I don't know if this is what you're getting at, but some people say, well, why does the church oppose the usage of condoms, for example? Because what if you have a married couple, one of them has AIDS, shouldn't they be allowed to do this? Well, here's the response to that, I would say. That the loving thing to do for that couple, although very, very difficult, would be to actually abstain within their marriage from relations, because there's obviously a theological problem with condoms. It falls under the umbrella of contraception, if you will. So it's contraceptive. For that reason, it's wrong, anyways. But what if you're trying to protect someone from a disease? Well, the real way to do that is simply to abstain, because this is kind of a poor analogy. It's the only thing I can come up with right now, but you could say to somebody, you know what, I'm going to punch you in the head, but I'm going to put a helmet on you so the impact won't hurt you. You know, why even engage in something that might result in the possible death of the spouse, let's say? Because, you know, even these condoms, of course, have failure rates. And so that would not necessarily protect someone from getting the disease. It may be difficult, but there are many situations where this happens. For example, let's say you have a married couple, one of them becomes paralyzed in an accident, and they can no longer have sexual relations. Does this mean the husband is free then to go out and do whatever he wants, you know, on the side, you know, to fulfill his quote-unquote needs? No, obviously he still has to be faithful to his wife, and even though they cannot, you know, enter into the sexual act of marriage anymore, he still must be faithful to her. So, love doesn't always have to be expressed.
Yeah, the church allows the calendar, you know, to check the period of the woman, to know if she's going to get pregnant or not.
Right.
What exactly is the difference from that as a contraception?
Great question. I don't know if you guys heard that, but when it comes to family planning, you know, a lot of people say, okay, if I'm a Catholic and I can't use contraception, then does that mean I have to have 500 kids? Well, no. I mean, if you can have 500 kids, that's great. You know, if you can look after them. But what the church is into is something called responsible parenting. And so, in responsibly planning the size of our family, very prayerfully, the church allows the use of something which is called NFP, which stands for Natural Family Planning. Natural Family Planning. It's a very, very scientific method that determines fertility of a woman. And here's a little pop quiz for you guys. How many times in a month can a woman conceive a child?
How many days or how many?
How many times in a month?
Just one time.
Okay, once. Who says more than that? Can a woman conceive more than one time in a month? Who says 2 times? Well, you guys. The answer is 1. You can only. I've spoken to some people and they said like, 5. You know, like, you know, some high school groups and stuff. So actually, a woman is only fertile 1 time. This is like basic grade 7 health, I guess. A woman is only fertile 1 time in her monthly cycle. Us men, we're fertile all the time. You know, we could become a father at any moment, you know, virtually. But a woman is only fertile once. So this natural family planning uses very scientific methods to determine exactly at what point in the woman's monthly cycle that she can conceive a child.
So that a woman is fertile once a month, but that time lasts between 3 and 7 days.
Okay, yeah.
So it's a tricky question because, yeah, she can be fertile only
there is
once.
a time period. Yeah, I agree with you there. There is a time period within that month where she is fertile. Now, if you are a couple that's saying we would like to conceive a child, this is great because you know exactly when she's fertile. You know, it's like that commercial, you know, where the couple are sitting in church and the woman says, you know, honey, the oven is ready. You ever seen that one? He's like, what? The oven is ready. The oven is ready. Oh, okay. And then they run out of the church. Now, I'm not suggesting that couples do that. You know, just leave mass. And, you know, but if you want to conceive a child, this is great because it helps you do that. But if you have a serious reason to avoid conceiving a child, and the church says it has to be a serious reason, because the normal default position for a Catholic married couple is to be open to God's gift of new life. Because there can really never be too many children, just like there can never be too many flowers. The idea is kind of bizarre. Life is great, it's a gift. However, a couple might have a serious reason not to have a child. What might a serious reason be? I've just lost my job. I've just found out I have a deadly, debilitating disease and I'm going to be dead in 6 months. Probably not a great time to become a dad. Okay? You know, we're talking serious reasons here. I want the new plasma TV and kids are expensive is probably not a good reason. Or, you know, I want to spend more time watching the playoffs. No, I don't have time to be a father. So what you do is, if you have a serious reason, it has to be a serious reason, then what you do is you find out when the woman is fertile,